the sort of active disinformation versus misinformation conversation is one we're going to have ongoing. But I think, can you imagine what will happen if all of a sudden a law is passed and a date comes, and suddenly on Twitter especially, but on Facebook and other sites, all the lights go on in the club and you suddenly see what everybody looks like.
You see who you're talking to. You're like,
yes.
Oh my God.
That everybody goes. Can you imagine, like, just when that law goes into effect and just see, like, there's these, like, everybody's check mark turns a different color, and suddenly you're like, oh, it's a yellow check mark. That's a bot. What? Fuck, I've been arguing with this bot for a year. You know what I mean?
I know. Like, that's the reason why they're gonna, again, they can't succeed without the environment that we're currently in. So that's the problem. Is, they have the Senate, they have I could even see it, obviously, in the House, potentially marshaling enough with a couple potential sane Republicans. And frankly, if we even have a short-term majority there because of the fact that they only have a one-vote advantage in the House. I could even see the Senate if a few Lisa Murkowski types sort of switch over. But the point is Trump's president. He knows how he got elected. He knows how he'll try to stay in office. And that's through this. So he'll never let that bill through.
Yeah. Well, again, he won't be able to stop it in some of the blue states, because I genuinely think.
Oh yeah, states can pass it.
Yeah. If strategically major states do it as a way, if one does it, it's enough, because there's no mix and match. You can just and people could go check via VPN real easily, and then they would go, why don't we have that nationwide? And the pressure starts, and they go, when you get, if you're in California, you can somehow see, but you can't see it elsewhere.
This is what sometimes frustrates me a lot. But it seems like Gavin Newsom has been stepping up in a big way on trying to be at the forefront of this stuff. I haven't seen nearly as much from Kathy Hochul, who needs to be doing it too. New York and California still, when you look at the importance of Hollywood, and you look at the importance of Wall Street and Silicon Valley and the rest of it, and all of it in our economy, not to mention the size of those states in terms of people, then if you can get this kind of stuff passed in those states, not to mention most of the Northeast, I'm sure certain swing states, Illinois, and the entire West Coast. My guess is Colorado, you throw in there, you throw in some places. by the time you're done, you would reach a lot of people. People forget that Republicans have, benefit from what was the term George W. Bush used? The bigotry of low expectations, or whatever it was.
The soft bigotry of low expectations, right?
Low expectations of the fact that like 14 cows live in South Dakota and like 2 people, but they get 3 electoral votes. And North Dakota, and Oklahoma, and Nebraska, and
and they all have 2 senators.
Right. And so my point is that this isn't, when people think that, there's the Republicans and, so many Republicans. No, we could actually reach a vast majority of people just in the states that we control, because we control states with a lot more people than they have. So there's that.
Right. And most of the money. It's all like when Trump talks about crime in the United States, it's like, if you look at it, most of it's Democratic cities and Democratic governors. And you're like, yeah, that's what, he's like, that's where all the crime is. Not per capita, because Bakersfield apparently is right up there. And that's McCarthy's district.
When you want to look up Birmingham, Alabama, and a few other places like that, if he wants to get an honest.
Yeah, where you have a way higher chance of being harmed, 1-to-1 in the streets than you do in a big city. And of course, the reason why big cities have all the, the crime, statistically speaking, is because they also have all the people. They have all the coffee sex and theaters.
And among all the people you're talking about are all the Republicans who claim to hate everything big cities represent. And then almost to a person, every single one of them, do you see them moving to rural Montana or rural Kansas? No, they all move to New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles or whatever. They hate them, but they just seem to enjoy the good restaurants and culture and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And they all want the same trappings that they decry the rest of the time. One of my favorite things right now, and I'm used to this. This is the countrification of, and that sounds dirtier than I mean it to be. But, the countrification of like U.S. culture is that, and this is probably to some degree what you see with like inner city. Like that bit, there's this bit Chris Rock had about being the first guy to go to college in your neighborhood, and nobody, everybody treats you like, like, oh, I got my master's degree. Oh, you a master now? Like that whole thing. Okay, that is not unique just to that community. It's reminiscent of a good portion of the South for a very long time. Because the world has gotten more technological, they have shied away from the overt anti-education part of it and gone towards this kind of like real job, real people, real America thing, and have really pushed that, so that you have all these this anti-elitism in the redneck thing is all about, you can go to Tennessee Tech, or you can go to I don't know, Alabama State University, but if you go to ironically, if you go to like a Princeton or Yale, or you go to Harvard, or you go to any of the Ivy League schools, which I believe we worked out last time should be called Poison Ivy League, when you and I were talking at this point.
Correct. I attended some of those, but I would still, at this point in time, I only go to the ones that the worst tech tyrants, the worst presidents, and those who shoot healthcare people go to, it seems. So.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, though, that's the weird crisscross. It goes to that whole Glenn Greenwald thing of where he's like, I don't give a shit what the New York Times says, but bitch about it for half an hour. This we hate the elites, and yet Trump does nothing but beat his chest about going to Wharton.
I went to Wharton, and it was
right.
And, truth of the matter is, his brother knew somebody in the admissions office and made a phone call, because that kind of stuff happened back then. Yeah, they all hated except for, Tom Cotton went to Harvard, and Ron DeSantis went to Yale.
Right.
All of the Bushes went to Yale.
So did Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz went to Princeton and Harvard Law School.
Right.
Yeah, they're very anti-elite over there in the Republican Party.
Yeah, and that's an ongoing thing. It never.
Elise Stefanik, Harvard. Yep.
Yeah, they never seem to wake up to it, right? And it's very curious to me, because you're decrying the elites and yet clamoring to be one. What is more elite than the small group of people who've been on the cover of Time magazine, for example, was the idea. Especially
but it's what tells you everything you need to know about them. This is their basic disposition. Is the things they hate because of their deep, soulless well of insecurity, because they've never felt like they've measured up or whatever it is. Even if they've gone to an elite university or whatever, they've never felt like they've gotten the proper level of adulation, and thanks from all of us for all the good stuff they do and all that. So that's inevitably where all of this comes from, right? It's like, you're a guy who's been out in Hollywood. It was always the failed Hollywood, the ones who thought they should make it in Hollywood, that ended up hating the left. Like Breitbart was a failed comedian in Hollywood, and it was that jack-off's name, Kurt Schlichter, who used to have up in his bio at Twitter about how he was a comedian, and I used to have fun going and picking on him and pointing out how unfunny he was and ripping on him. And at some point, he took that out of his bio because he was a failed. I mean, they basically they fail at things. It's certain sort of mainstream elite, things that a lot of the rest of us don't even care about, and then they attack those things and blame them for all of the trouble in their lives.